This is GBC News, the headlines. The government says any business is welcome to apply for funding through Community Credit Union. The Environmental Agency says water at Eastern Beach is compliant with EU law despite nearby sewage overflows. The parents of an alleged abuse victim described the messages they found as disgusting. And the first youth parliament sees teenagers debate in the chamber. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The government says any business is welcome to apply for funding through the charity Community Credit Union, and it rejects any suggestion that approval is based on whether the applicant is considered a friend of Sir Joe Bossano's. This follows criticism from the Shadow Minister for Public Finance, Roy Clinton, who called Community Credit Union the Bank of Joe, saying the minister is acting as a sole judge on whether loans it grants to businesses are to be financed by the savings bank.
In a recent opinion piece in the Gibraltar Chronicle, Roy Clinton highlighted parliamentary answers from Sir Joe Bossano in January, where he said Community Credit Union does not have a role within the National Economic Plan. However, the savings bank invests in loan notes issued by the company. It provides funding to private sector projects that promote economic and social benefits to Gibraltar. In his Chronicle piece, Mr. Clinton asked, why is the Bank of Joe even necessary given the existence of Credit Finance Company Limited, which is owned by the government and has a money-lending licence? And who is really benefiting from its financial support? In response to GBC questions, the government says credit finance is used mainly for funding the civil service pension conversion into reverse annuities. It says the savings bank has £900 million invested in 45 other money-lending institutions, none of which provide details of who has borrowed what money or how much. It says, in the case of Community Credit Union, a request for funding by a local business can be made to Minister Bossano. The proposal is then passed to the credit union to assess its feasibility. It goes on to say the savings bank will only provide funding to Community Credit Union if it is satisfied that there are economic benefits to Gibraltar in the proposed project, and once the necessary due diligence and technical assessment have been carried out. The government says approval is given without regard to who knows whom and without regard to any personal relationship. The minister responsible for the savings bank has the final word on approval after the technical assessment has been completed. And it says the government has no interest in any company that receives funding from Community Credit Union. It says the question is therefore not who may or may not have received funding. The question is whether the funding is supporting projects that provide economic and social benefits to Gibraltar.
According to the Environmental Agency, water quality at Eastern Beach is compliant with EU laws, despite sewage overflows affecting parts of the neighbouring Spanish coastline. The Environmental Agency says it regularly tests local bathing water. The findings come as bathing has been temporarily banned at Levante Beach in La Línea after routine water quality tests detected contamination levels above permitted levels. High readings of fecal matter were recorded at Western Beach in Gibraltar over a particular day in mid-May.
The overflows seen on neighbouring Spain's Mediterranean coast have raised concerns about potential impacts on Gibraltar's bathing waters. However, the Environmental Agency told GBC there's been no corresponding deterioration in water quality at Eastern Beach. The latest sampling results, taken on the 27th of May, found Eastern Beach to be compliant with the required bathing water standards. The Environmental Agency conducts regular bathing water monitoring throughout the year, testing for indicators of fecal contamination to ensure our beaches remain safe for public use. Under the EU Bathing Water Directive, monitoring focuses on E. coli and intestinal enterococci fecal matter to recognise indicators of potential sewage contamination. The latest results show all of Gibraltar's designated bathing waters meet the required standards. This includes Western Beach, which saw significantly elevated readings in mid-May. All results can be found on the Environmental Agency website, where it notes that current bathing water standards are twice as strict as those in place before 2015. The Environmental Agency says it tests waters every 2 weeks between mid-April and the end of October, despite only being legally required to sample them once every 4 weeks.
The parents of an alleged child abuse victim have told the Supreme Court jury that messages they found on their child's iPad were disgusting and horrible. Former teacher and scout leader Clayton Busto is accused of 19 sexual offences against children, dating back to between 2007 and 2016. He denies all charges.
The jury first heard further cross-examination of a complainant referred to in court as Mr. Y. Defence lawyer Chris Marsh-Finch challenged him over the timing of an alleged incident at Mr. Busto's home. The defence suggested Mr. Y may have been 16 at the time and able to give consent. Mr. Y maintained he believed he was 15 at the time. The jury also heard evidence from another complainant, Mr. Z. He said Clayton Busto contacted him through Facebook and Snapchat when he was 17, sending sexual images and asking him to send images back. He told the court the defendant would describe the exchanges as banter, but said he now sees it as inappropriate communication from someone who had been his teacher. Although 16 is the age of consent in Gibraltar, the age rises to 18 when the defendant is in a position of trust. A friend of Mr. Y also gave evidence, saying he had seen an indecent video and photographs allegedly involving Mr. Busto. The court later heard from the parents of Mr. X. His mother described the messages found on their son's iPad as disgusting and horrible. She said they didn't report the matter at the time because of concerns for their son's mental health. Mr. X's father told the jury that a few years later he raised the issue with police, but chose not to make a formal report. He said that several years after that, he was contacted by police and decided to give more evidence about the matter he had previously raised. When he then named Clayton Busto, police confirmed he was the person they were investigating. The jury heard it was at that point that he told his son. He said the moment he did, his son was absolutely willing to collaborate. The trial continues.
Parliament will meet at 3 p.m. on Thursday, the 18th of June. The meeting will start with opposition questions. The House did not meet last month due to the ongoing building works.
There's a packed agenda for this month's Parliament. The Chief Minister will lay the Principal Auditor's accounts of the Borders and Coast Guards Agency for the 7 years between 2012 and 2017. The Data Protection Regulations 2026 will be laid by the Minister for Justice and Trade and Industry. The Heritage and Antiquities Advisory Council's Parliamentary Report for 2025 will be laid by the Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. John Cortes will also present the Climate Methane Regulations and the Certification for Carbon Removals and Carbon Storage Regulations 2026. There are 24 bills on the agenda, 21 of which can be read immediately. And there's some hefty legislation here, including the Public Service Standards and Conflict of Interest Bill. There are amendments to the Gibraltarian Status and Immigration Act and to Transport, Housing and Sanctions legislation. The Appropriation Bill is also in the agenda, with a budget session traditionally held over June or July.
And the very first Youth Parliament has sat this week. 16 young people, aged 16 to 19, debated a number of issues in the Chamber of Parliament. Proceedings were overseen by Speaker Karen Ramage-Phillips.
The Parliament Chamber, a sight we're all familiar with when in session, but this time there was something different. Might this be the future of Gibraltar politics? These students took part in the first Gibraltar Youth Parliament. Presiding over this session of Parliament was Speaker Karen Ramage-Phillips.
I think we were all impressed with the calibre. I haven't really interacted with them before this from the perspective of how are you preparing your argument or what are you going to say. It was just very much preparation of you have to be here at this time, at that day, at this. So I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, the environment alone would have been intimidating enough, because sitting in the Parliament chamber, a place where some of them had never stepped into before last week, is intimidating of itself. But then to be addressing subjects of such importance in current society, in front of friends and family and public, and to do so with such ease and such confidence and such control over their subjects, I think they have been amazing. And it's a testament to the wonderful youth that we have in Gibraltar, the talent and the perseverance. I mean, a lot of these young people, let us be clear, are in the middle of exams.
The young would-be politicians debated some of the issues shaping their generation, including artificial intelligence, freedom of speech, and even whether the voting age should be lowered to 16.
Freedom of speech is often described as the cornerstone of a free society and the principal pillar of a free government.
Rights do not exist in isolation. They exist alongside the rights of others.
Freedom of speech is not intended to protect views that are popular. Popular views require no protection.
Democracy rarely collapses overnight. It erodes piece by piece when misinformation replaces facts.
Madam Speaker, it is also historically observable the fact that generally acceptable social norms evolve and change over time.
To understand both human nature and human pain, we are deciding the kind of society we will actually live in.
When arguments are brought into public debate, they can be picked apart, and through this, what is false is stripped away and truth becomes clear.
Reasonable restrictions are not about suppressing debate. They are about ensuring that everyone, not just the most aggressive, can participate in a society safely and freely.
The idea behind the initiative was to give young people a voice, a valuable platform to develop confidence, public speaking skills, teamwork, and a greater understanding of parliamentary practices. There were 4 adjudicators, with the government and opposition represented by Deputy Chief Minister Joseph Garcia, GSD MP Atris Sanchez, along with broadcaster Michelle Rougeroni and lawyer Jonathan Garcia. The sessions continue until the 22nd of June.
Unite says it has negotiated a number of pay agreements across the private sector in recent months. The union says workers at Boluda, Gibraltar have secured a 2.9% pay rise backdated to the 1st of January. Employees at Restso achieved a 3% pay increase, also backdated to January. In both those cases, employees have received a one-off payment of £500. Unite says it has secured a clause ensuring hourly paid workers remain 10 pence an hour above the statutory minimum wage if future increases exceed the current rate. Spokesperson Christian Duos said collective bargaining remains the most effective way to secure fair pay and protect workplace rights. Unite says it is also close to concluding pay talks with mighty Gibraltar. Irish hotelier Noel O'Callaghan has claimed that 2 of his sons sold Gibraltar's Elliott Hotel without his knowledge, as a bitter family dispute over a business empire worth an estimated €400 million continues through the Irish courts. This according to a report in the Irish Independent. Jonathan Sacramento tells us more.
76-year-old Noel O'Callaghan claims he was frozen out of the family business after handing control to his 3 sons. His legal team told the Irish court the Elliott Hotel in Gibraltar had been sold without notifying him, while an associated farm in County Tipperary had also been put up for sale. They further alleged he had been threatened with having to remove his horses from the family's stud farm if he failed to pay livery fees. Lawyers for Paul and Charles O'Callaghan disputed aspects of the claims, arguing the Gibraltar Hotel was not part of the O'Callaghan Collection Group, and that Mr. O'Callaghan was not a director of the company which owned it. The case has been adjourned until July.
You're watching GBC News. Still to come, Media Training Coach hosts workshops around the Rock and a research project by the University of Santiago de Compostela on multilingualism. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Do stay with us. Welcome back. What story do you want to tell? To whom are you selling it? And what do you want them to take away from your story? If you're tasked with public speaking, these are some of the questions media training coach Hannah Shelswell encourages you to ask yourself. The former ITV broadcaster and founder of Boost Training and Coaching delivered a workshop to the Society of Accountants at the offices of the GFSB. Cristina Cortes spoke to her.
What I'm doing is supporting people with presentation skills and communication skills. What I find is that just because you've gone up an organisation and been promoted, it doesn't mean that you've necessarily grown in confidence when it comes to delivering your messaging. So today we're doing that. We're talking about, well, how can I do storytelling? How can I start with an opening hook? What are my key messages? What do I really want people to leave with today? So what we focus on is thinking about audience first and what we want that audience to think, feel, and ultimately do. And then we start working out, well, what do we want to say, what are the key messages, and how do we bring it to life? Because people love stories. People connect to people when they're telling stories, but often when we're delivering more formal presentations, it can be quite dry and a bit too technical, and we haven't made that connection with the audience. So we're looking at what makes a good presenter, but also what makes a good presentation and a good pitch. And we've got all of those ideas together, and then we're building on that together as to how we can do that effectively using some of the frameworks that I teach them.
And of course, you have a background in broadcasting and journalism, so how do you apply this towards this training? You've mentioned storytelling, knowing your stuff and knowing your audience.
I worked for ITV for 15 years as a journalist and presenter, and I absolutely loved it regionally and nationally. But what that taught me was how to tell stories and to do that effectively, and also really how to communicate our messages in a way that people understand and in language that they understand. So often we'll be doing a presentation and we'll put in words that we might not really be able to say properly, or we want to sound clever, or it's just because we've written it in a formal way. So what we talk about is writing for the spoken word, delivering messages that people can really understand. So yeah, I'm bringing my broadcast training and experience, but also I got a teacher training qualification, and I taught people in Jersey in the local college, students there, and I saw their confidence grow and their grades got better because they were learning these presentation skills, which people call soft skills, but they are business critical skills, and they're skills that we do need to learn. I'm not going to play the violin for you right now because that would be a disaster. I've never learned how to play the violin, and people think that maybe they should just be able to get up on the stage, but it is something that we need to take time to learn, to really hone our body language, our tone of voice, how are we standing, what are we conveying with our hands, and what are we doing, because we're giving away messages through non-verbal signals as well as what we say.
And of course you've also applied that broadcasting training directly to broadcasting with some training at GBC as well, so can you tell us a bit about that?
It has been amazing working with the journalists and presenters at GBC. Such a talented team, really committed and dedicated, but it's been great to come in, to look at how people are sitting in the studio, and to really look at how we can have more of a conversation when we're delivering, because people relate to people, and what we want to try and do is make that connection in that way. So yeah, I've been working with the team, absolutely loving it, and it's brilliant to be having that relationship, and I'm going to be coming back more often to do a bit of mentoring and support.
Parking restrictions, road closures and diversions will all be in place as part of the policing and security arrangements for this year's King's Birthday Parade, which will take place on Thursday at Casemates. As from tomorrow morning, parking restrictions will be enforced in roads and areas around Casemates, and there will be temporary bus and taxi facilities. There will also be restrictions on bicycle and scooter parking at Casemates, in Landport Tunnel and in the marketplace. The measures will be in place until further notice. Now, local research for a project conducted by the University of Santiago de Compostela is underway, with researchers calling for more people to take part. BabbleBrain is investigating multilingual practices within two communities on the Iberian Peninsula, Galicia and Gibraltar. PhD student Hugo Parra and postdoctoral researcher Lucia Vietes spoke to Kellyanne Borge about the research process.
First, we do a recording session. So we leave. People have to come in pairs. So they come with a relative or friend, and we let them speak for 30 minutes together. We leave the room, and they just have to speak about anything they want in a natural way. They know they are recorded, but we let them speak. Then we come back. And we have a questionnaire, a social linguistic questionnaire, where we ask them which languages they speak and with whom, and then that's it. But it takes a bit of time. The people that come, they are happy to do it because they find it very interesting, and at the end they are happy. But yeah, that's basically what we are doing when we welcome the participants.
So how do people sign up? How do they contact you to get involved?
Some people come to John McIntosh Hall because we are there most days and talk to us. But we also have an email, is babble.brain@usc.gal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have a Facebook page, Babble Brain, and an Instagram that is babble.brain. That's most, like, they can just come to John McIntosh Hall, and if we are there, we have a poster when we are in a Studio One, then mostly we are there and if the poster is there, we are in the surroundings, so they can just come and talk to us and ask questions if they have. People think that they have to come with answers, right? And that's not what we want. We want to see how people live and communicate in the multilingual community as Gibraltar is. So anything that they do will be amazing and perfect, and it's not a test. There's not a correct answer.
The women's national side closed their first ever World Cup qualifying campaign with a heavy loss to Kosovo this evening. 8-0 the final score. Gibraltar unable to build on the goal they scored in Sofia a few days ago, their first ever competitive goal. They were drawn into a very tough group, and the learning curve was always going to be steep. But it is a learning experience for the players who are gaining invaluable time at this level, and head coach Stella Gottel will be looking for the positives to build on going forward. She spoke to Jose Mari Ruiz, who was at Europa Point Stadium.
Yes, full time not long ago here as Gibraltar's FIFA World Cup qualifiers came to an end. 8-0 they lost to Kosovo. I'm joined now by the Gibraltar head coach Stella Gottel. 8-0, difficult scoreline. We knew it was going to be a difficult game.
Yes, definitely. Somehow the result is very tough, and the match was very difficult, but we knew this from the very first moment. When, let's say, we finished the game against Bulgaria, already the focus went on Kosovo, and we knew that somehow it will be a dead race between Kosovo and Croatia to fight for the first place on the table. And somehow we knew that Kosovo will go with all their power on us, because they try to score as much goals as possible to beat Croatia and to win the first place. So that's why even from the beginning of the match was really difficult. The intensity was really high. Those players are amazing players from Kosovo, technically, tactically. A lot of them, they play in professional leagues, and you could see that definitely they were in a much higher speed than us.
Yeah, just to put into perspective, a lot of the players play in the top division in the Bundesliga, top division in Switzerland. And like you say, when you throw into the mix that they needed to score as many goals as possible, it was the recipe for disaster for us here tonight, unfortunately.
Well, yes, somehow, because we knew that, like I mentioned already, they will go with all their power, and this is what actually happened. And also we had some difficulties with certain injuries, and we know that for us it's the second match. And again, we have still some things that we should work on. And somehow you mentioned even the previous interview that we didn't play our players the match for a month because the season ended up very quickly. And then somehow even we tried our best to prepare the players, but always somehow the second match is very tough for us, and especially the second half. But I must admit that even today the result was 5-0 at the first half, and somehow we didn't fall apart in the second half, even though Kosovo scored those 3 goals, but still they were chasing the goals. But somehow we kept our heads together as a team, and somehow the main idea was never quit. So always just keep going, reset, just keep going, and today Kosovo was a much better team than us.
It's your first campaign with the team and only the second campaign for Gibraltar as a whole, so how do you reflect on the whole qualifiers?
To be honest, I'm very proud of the players, and somehow the whole campaign for us was a bit like a roller coaster with some good results, like we had 1-0 defeat against Croatia, even though we lost, but we played amazing match and we had a lot of opportunities up in front, and this is definitely one of the positives that we can take from that match. And then again, we played against Bulgaria, away match, when we scored our first competitive goal and when everyone was so proud of us and even players on themselves. So definitely somehow we set up the foundations. Like I said, it was a roller coaster in terms of the results, in terms of emotion, maybe for the players. But somehow also we didn't have any serious injuries, which is very important to mention, because all the experience that now players maybe gained during this campaign and the foundations that we set up will definitely help them in the future in the Nations League that is coming up.
Stella, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The words of Gibraltar head coach there, Stella Gottel, and as she rightly says, this campaign will be remembered for far more than just the results. There's been some very historic moments here. Of course, our first time playing in the qualifiers, that 1-0 defeat to Croatia here at Europa Point. And let's not forget the historic first goal scored in a competition by Joel Gilbert.
And just before we leave you, the results of this evening's lottery draw, which did take place a little earlier than usual. The first prize of £100,000 went to ticket number